Alright, well, I got kind of brave here. Decided to try this turntable out, record changer, and it seemed to work pretty well, actually. I mean, I think the needle or cartridge is definitely probably going to need to be replaced, but it does play. I just put the record on that I got with the console, because I don't really care about it. It does play, but you know, I'm more impressed that the automatic turntable functions seem to work. Oops, it's going to go play it again. Well, maybe not perfectly. I don't really know how all of this works. I do know that when let's see, how did I do that? Gotta get it to turn off again. There we go. So let me see if I can do this with one hand. Just back up on the thing just to demonstrate. Turn it on. Last time it worked. Yep, there we go. And over to the correct position. Bam. Works. So that's good. Need a new cartridge, but that'll come. So I'm going to go ahead and get this plinth out of here. I think that's going to be my next project. And start building a new one for this thing. And then just an update on the receiver. I went ahead and pulled it out and cleaned it all up, and it really looks good now. Can't talk. Probably can't really notice it, but the glass is all clean. The plastic behind it that has all the lighted numbering and everything was all cleaned up, and it really is turned out good. It shined up the chrome. It looks really nice. So I just got to finish getting it electrically restored, and then get the plinth made for this and get it lubed up and running properly in a new cartridge or whatever, and I'm going to be good to go with this thing. And the last thing I think I'll do is go ahead and finish the top. I think I'm going to be done with this. I'm going to try to keep it relatively simple. Okay, well, the next task on this Zenith console was to try to get the turntable plinth out, and I had just got it removed, and it was about as difficult as I thought it was going to be, but thankfully it got out, or I got it out without damaging any of the finished area up here. So the way this was constructed was they had routed in a groove around the perimeter, and then the piece was actually rabbited here on the end, you can see, to slide into that groove. So it kind of went in, you know, basically like this, slid in like that. And then underneath of it, they had glued in 45-degree support blocks, 3 on each side. So I knew the blocks had to come out. What I didn't know is whether or not they had also glued this in. And thankfully they did not. But it was a pretty tight fit all the same. So this thing is really well constructed, I gotta say. It was not easy to get out, but I just kind of took my time and started by sawing, you know, if you can imagine the board coming down here 3/8 of an inch. I sawed here and here to kind of give myself a little play, because I tried to hit it, you know, with a hammer. After I took these, chiseled these off, I tried to hit it with a hammer, and there was just too much friction. And that's when I was starting to worry that they had glued it. But what I ended up doing was, like I say, cutting a gap here And then I stuck a screwdriver into the side here and just kind of pried out on it, and this side kind of came out. And at that point I was like, oh, okay, they didn't glue it. And it was really just a matter of kind of making some strategic cuts, carefully of course, around sort of the perimeter of this thing, so that I could, you know, basically pull it more or less straight out. There was no sliding it out. So yeah, I did a little damage here on the side, but this is not a finished area, so it really doesn't matter too much. And I'll probably go ahead and get my chiseling here and get the rest of this wood off, because I'm going to probably need to glue blocks back in here as well. Although I might just be able to do them here and here, and then on the other side there and there where these weren't, but I'll try to clean this up anyway. It's going to need some kind of a support underneath there. I may actually run a continuous block. I don't know. Or I may actually put something in there that I can unscrew. That might even be better, and that just kind of holds this up, because that's all this really did. All these glue blocks really did was just hold this into the groove and keep it from sliding out. But then again, they had three screws up here. It wasn't going to slide out. Sort of overbuilt. So what I might actually end up doing is just screwing in some L brackets here, just to the appropriate height. Not screw them into the plinth, but just screw them in here if I can, just to hold this thing up, you know, up to the underside of this finished piece here. I don't know. Anyway, I did find a piece at Home Depot of 3/8 inch plywood, or nearly 3/8 inch, whatever the equivalent is today. It's not as good a quality as what came out of there, but that's fine. It's as good as it's going to get. So I think what I'm going to do, you know, this is pine. I really can't just stain that and expect it to look like this. I don't know what kind of wood this is, but I saw at the woodworking store they had a cherry veneer that was only like $8. Now it's not pre-glued or backered, but I think I should be able to use some contact cement and just glue it to this surface and then cut it and route it and slide it in. I'm just going to have to be real careful about, you know, these rabbit cuts. I also yesterday cut out this template. I'm not going to pull it out of there. Kind of ripped in one spot. But I did cut out a template for the turntable, for the plinth, based on measurements that I took from the underside of the turntable, which is now up there in the original thing that it came in. So, I guess the next thing I'll do is probably go buy the veneer for that. I may do that tomorrow. Go buy the veneer, which, like I said, is $8, and go ahead and get that thing cut out, and then tape the template down, draw the lines, and then probably just use a jigsaw with a fine blade to cut it, and then I will cut the rabbet on the table saw, right, until I can get this thing to fit in here satisfactorily. I'm going to leave a little bit more, I think, of play in this so that it's not so bloody hard to get out of there. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to have to mangle it trying to get it in there. But, so yeah, I got this out. That was my goal. And it was not easy. I didn't expect it to be, but it's out of there. And we'll go ahead and work on constructing the new one. I may see what I can do to just maybe re-glue this stuff back up real quick. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, honestly, or if I need to worry about it. But we'll see. Making some progress. Oh, yeah, another thing. Cross my fingers. This one tube, what the heck did I do with it? I must have put it up on the workbench. One tube in the output stage, which I showed you before, looked like it had been red plating. And this thing had started to do that buzzing business again. It would be playing fine, and then bzzz, it would stop playing and just buzz. And I thought, you know what, I wonder if that one tube is just shorting out or something. It definitely looks different than the other ones. So I pulled out one of my output tubes from my amp upstairs and stuck it in there, and I played this thing for probably 45 minutes to an hour last night, and it didn't act up. So fingers crossed again. That might be the issue. So I'm definitely going to be getting some new output tubes for this thing. I think probably all of them are due, because they all, like I said, look like original Zeniths. So anyways, making progress. Check back in. Okay, well, continuing to work on retrofitting a new plinth into the Zenith console. So the last video I showed, I had taken this one out. Got some color matching to do, but anyway, I went to the woodworking store and bought some mahogany veneer. I don't really know if that's the right kind of wood, but it seemed to be heading towards the right shade, and the grain pattern kind of looked correct. I don't know if that's what this is or not, I have no idea. But anyway, I bought some of that and proceeded to screw up the first effort at cutting them to size and taping them together and seaming them. So I had to go buy another one. So I was another $8. But here's the final result, and no, it's not perfect. I do have some gaps here, not real big, but gaps nonetheless. Most of this is going to be covered by the turntable, or at least some of it. And I figure the rest of it, I'm probably just going to throw a little wood filler in and call it done. And that's really just going to show on the sides. And honestly, like I said, not much of that is visible. What you're going to see is this piece and probably some in the back. So no, it's not perfect, but it's done, mostly. What I did with this, I saw this on YouTube, is you go ahead and get you some Titebond glue, and then you spread the glue on the underside of the veneer and on the top of the substrate, and then you let them dry to the touch. And then once they're dry to the touch, they're not going to stick together on their own. So you can lay the piece on, and then you take your trusty clothes iron on its highest setting and basically iron on the veneer. And the heat reactivates the glue, and you get to push down on it, and so far it seems like it's holding pretty good. And then I took this wood block and just sort of applied pressure evenly, just sort of make sure. And then once I trimmed the side piece here with the utility knife, I came back with the iron and just hit the edge real good, just to make sure that doesn't start lifting up. I am going to be trimming this off. It's about an inch too big, so I'll be trimming an inch off of it anyway, so probably a ½ inch off each side or whatever, I don't know. Whatever, it's going to be trimmed on this side, and then once I get the width, I'll probably make a cut across the front also, just to even this up. And then I will be doing a rabbet joint on those 3 sides, and then I'm going to slide it in. Once I get it in there, I'm going to run my pencil along the back where it needs to be trimmed for the back, where the back of the cabinet is, and then I'll just hit that with the saw. So it's my first attempt at veneering a sheet of, putting veneer on a substrate other than edge banding. And I got to say that it was trickier than I thought, and I would have some things to learn, I believe, before I tried to do it on anything more important, because these gaps are really not that good. But anyway, and then I kind of showed you earlier, I've got a couple of strips that I was experimenting with the finish on. Now this one's a little bit too dark, or no, that one's about right. It might need to be a little bit more brown. I don't know what the color looks like on the phone, but to be a really good match, it needs to be more orangey brown than this. But I think I'm going to be pretty close. Like I say, this board does not show a lot, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, that's it for now. All right. Well, I guess it went okay. Finally got this plinth thing cut out, rabbited, trimmed off the back, right there, and I guess that's pretty much where it needs to be. Where's my thumb? There we go. Let's see where the camera was pointing. I could probably tap that in a little bit, but I'll wait until I actually apply the finish to this thing. But yeah, I took my time and got it to slide in good, the way it should. So, you know, there's no seam really showing around the edge because it's all rabbited underneath this board. And then I put my trusty template here on top of the plinth and traced it out, and just took my time with a fine-toothed jigsaw blade, and came out pretty good. So, whew, I just got to finish it. All right. Well, the Zenith, which I haven't shot a video or anything of in a long time, has reached its final destination, as they say, I guess, at least in our house, I think. We decided to move the desk and the file cabinet out, since, you know, really Kim wasn't using it. I mean, she hasn't used it as far as a desk regularly, probably since she started working full time, really. I mean, she would use it to maybe pay bills or whatever, but that was about it. And, you know, just storage. So we decided to move it down the basement, and we bought a chair to put here in the corner, and decided to put the Zenith here. And we'll probably get something to put up on the wall here eventually. It's kind of a dead space now without the desk. Just had to figure out what. But I thought I'd go ahead and shoot some Zenith videos, since I haven't for a long time. Kind of hard to see in here. Just to give an update. It is generally playing okay, pretty good. I still have some issues though, and we'll try to see if we can maybe get to the bottom of those today, potentially, I guess, with my limited skills. But you know, I got the turntable in here. Of course, I manufactured the new plinth for it, and I bought a new cartridge, new old stock cartridge, EV branded, for the Cobra that fits. That's a direct replacement, so that's good. And I also lubed up the motor and sort of cleaned off the idler wheel, and really the turntable's working good. I mean, it'll play basically full automatic operation. You can put a stack of records on there, and it works just fine. Drops the needle in the right place, picks it up at the end, drops the record. I mean, the whole deal shuts off when it's done. It probably could use a cleaning a little bit more on the mechanism, but I'm a little bit hesitant to go ahead and disassemble it for that full clean and lube, just because of what happened with the Gerard, and that I really wasn't able to get it working again. Not that it worked well to begin with, but I'm a little hesitant to take it apart. Although this is a much simpler mechanism, I feel like, than the Gerard. But anyway, the issue that I'm having, and I don't know if this is going to do it now, of course it probably won't, is I'm getting some crackling through both channels. And crackling / popping sound. Now, I've always kind of had that, but it got a lot better after I finished the full recap, which I did do, by the way. Both the amp chassis and also the tuner preamp chassis. At least those that were in the signal chain and peripheral to it. I didn't really mess around with anything else, but I don't think there are any more of those Black Beauty or Bumblebee caps, whatever you want to call them, in the receiver chassis. Certainly not in the amp chassis. But anyways, I'm getting that snap crackle, or was real bad the last couple of days. Now, I think it's pretty much only when the volume is turned up some. Of course, it's not going to do it now. I am getting a little bit of, you can just hear a little bit of, I don't think it's 60 cycle. It could be, I guess. It almost sounds like 120 in the left channel. And I'm really getting that in the right channel. But the popping that I was hearing was definitely coming from both speakers. Maybe it'll happen if I turn some music, excuse me, some music on here. So, what do you want to hear? Chicago Blues? Okay. It sounds pretty good. The bottom end sounds decent. Kind of helps, I think, once I put it up against a wall. Putting the back on, which I haven't done yet permanently because I'm still sort of working on it, doesn't really seem to make any difference. So I've left the back off for now until I get everything worked out. But yeah, of course it's not going to do the crackle pop thing. But trust me, it was really bad, and it was weird. It was like it got bad when we got a little bit of a cold spell outside and the air got dry to where there was static. Because every time you would come up to this thing and touch the volume or the chassis or even the iPad, you'd get a static shock. And sometimes when I would do that, I would be coming up here to adjust the volume, or really the balance, because one side had gotten louder than the other. And I would come up and just touch it, and then all of a sudden the other side would come in normally. I don't know what the heck's going on. It's not doing it now, of course. But what we're going to do is go ahead and pull the chassis, both chassis out. Get them out on the workbench. This is something I've never done. Get them out on the workbench and just hook up some test speakers, probably the ones that are in the family room, just so we have a load. And I'm going to take some voltage measurements at various places according to the SAMs and see where we're at. And maybe see that, you know, I'll use like a plastic probe and just see if I can poke around at some components, maybe see if I can get this buzz to either go away or get worse. So it might help me identify that problem. I really feel like one of the issues could be, well, I sort of feel like it's one of two things. Either I've got a bad tube socket somewhere, because I've tested all the tubes and they're all right. I've either got a bad tube socket somewhere, or one or more, or I've got a resistor that's going bad. Because really there's nothing else in the amp circuit except for resistors, capacitors, and tubes, and of course the transformers. So I think we're going to get up under there and do some voltage measurements just to see where we're at. Maybe probe around, see if we can get that popping business to come out, or maybe even to get this static, this buzz sound to get worse or better, see if we can find that. My biggest fear, I guess, and it's really not a fear, because I don't think they'd be that hard to find, but my biggest concern is that it's one of the output transformers might be going bad. I've heard that you can get some arcing in those, and that it could actually feed back through both channels if that happens. So I don't know. I don't really know how to test an output transformer, but certainly there's videos on YouTube that will demonstrate that. And the other thing too is, you know, I want to check the voltages just in case there's something, you know, that would probably help me identify maybe a bad resistor. You know, even though it might be testing okay, it might still be faulty. So yeah, I don't know. Well, anyways, we'll get it out on the workbench here and check back once we do that. All right, we've got our little setup out here on the workbench. And just want to do a once over, make sure we've got everything connected properly, or as properly as I know how anyway. Alright, so power is easy enough. Coming in, and then we've got this Molex connector down here going in, and then we've got the other one going in, and then speaker wise we've got here's where it gets a little tricky. So if you look here on the schematic, well, actually if you look at the parts list, the woofers are at 8 ohms, 6 to 8, but we're calling it 8. And then the horn and the mid-range are at different ohm ratings. So the impedance on those speakers is different. And I know that that's kind of a weirdness with this setup, is that the way that the output transformers are wired, that it actually has a split. It's a center tap at 8 ohms, but then there's a secondary, I think, or whatever you would call it, that accommodates those other impedances. Now these speakers, as far as I know, I'm assuming they're 8 ohms. That's what most home stereo speakers of any later vintage would be. So what I've done is I've really only hooked the speakers up to the taps that come off of the output transformers that would go to the woofers. So that should be 8 ohms. Now what I don't know, right, so I've got these other two, that one would feed the right and one would feed the left for the other speakers. So that's the different impedance, and I think there's even another winding in the crossover network that handles the third impedance rating for the horn or the mid-range, whichever it is. So I hope that it's not going to hurt to not have these connected, but I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. So I'm going to try to make this test kind of quick. And I'm not going to turn it up very much, if at all. I'm really just after plate voltages and things of that nature at this point. So I'm going to get carried away there with any kind of actual audio test. But I do have a signal source. I'll use my phone. The only thing that I don't have, or I guess the other thing is, and I might need to do something about this, we'll kind of see, is I don't have the spring reverb out here. So these two wires are disconnected. I might need that spring reverb in order for this to work. I'd have to look at the schematic. There it is. The schematic for the signal chain here. Here's the reverb unit right here, and it looks like it really just branches off of it's mono, I know that much. It looks like it just branches off of the other signal and then joins back up later. So I'm gonna go ahead and assume that since it branches off, that it's not an on or off sort of affair, and that I will get a signal through despite not having. I think I just turned that off. So anyway, I just won't turn the reverb up, and I'm hoping that that will keep the buzz down, and that I will get a signal. So this is sort of a kind of a risky thing, I think. I'm mostly concerned about not having those other taps hooked up to anything. But again, we're going to try to make this quick. So I'm going to have my voltage points identified beforehand, and the thing hooked up first. I think I want to get the plate voltages on all the tubes, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so already I'm seeing an issue. As soon as I turn this on, well, first of all, I connected this to pin 1 of the phase reversing tube pin, and it should be 95 volts DC, and right away it jumped clear off the scale, and I've got it on the 200 volts DC scale. So I turned it off immediately, I don't have an amp meter hooked up to this to know how much I'm drawing, but I know that's way too many volts. So, according to the schematic anyway. So I went and turned it off right away and decided that, well, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the tweeters, which are 12 to 14 ohm, and go ahead and connect them up to these other leads here. I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like it's not good that I don't have those output transformers hooked up to something. Whether or not it's the right thing, I don't know. The ohmage might be a little bit off, but it needs a load. I don't think it's a good test. If that doesn't work, if it still jumps up there, I think what I'm going to have to do, and I'll probably end up wishing that I did this to begin with, of course, is go ahead and put all this crap back into the console and get it hooked up completely to the speaker and crossover network, and then I feel like that'll be a valid test. And if I'm still pegging that, then I know I've got another big issue going on. So anyway, I can't imagine this thing running that excessively on the voltage. So I don't know. I didn't even bother to hook it up to pin 1 of the other tube, or pin 6 of the same tube, to see what, to compare the two voltages. I'm going to try this first. If this doesn't work, then I'm going to go ahead and put it back in the console, and I don't know, figure out how to tilt this up in there. I guess that wouldn't be too hard, and do my voltages that way. But anyways, let's see what happens here after I get these connected. Okay, so I've got my tweeters hooked up here. And again, this isn't the complete speaker circuit, but at least those 2 taps are connected to something. I feel like that's important. I've rechecked to make sure that I've got the right pin, and number 1 is definitely the first one here, and that is the first plate, and then the second plate is 6, which is up there. But we'll do number 1 first. We have 0 volts now. I've also decided to go ahead and get the variac out and bring this up slowly. We'll keep an eye on this plate voltage here while we're doing that. All right, here we go. About 25. 50 volts. Oh, would help if I turned the unit on. Alright, here we go. I don't have any dial lights yet. 50. And the dial lights are starting to come on here. Still no plate voltage. Oh, there we go. We're already up over, I'm already at 60 volts, so, okay, well, look at that. I mean, it just climbs right up. You can see the numbers. I was up to 160 volts. There's no way that's right. So, I think, be careful here. I'm going to go ahead and hook it up to number 6. It should be this guy here. We're going to get the same thing, but go ahead and bring it up here. No smoke. Once again, I've left the unit off. Dummy. All right. And this one's supposed to be 195 volts, so. Probably not even on the right scale here. I'm going to pop this over to the 600 volt scale. Yeah, we're already way over. I'm only at 60 volts. So down she comes again. All right, I'm going to hook this back up into the unit and see what we get here, because this is clearly not working the way I want.